Hi BookTube, it's Missy, and I wanted to make a video and say hello. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. The first book that I want to talk about isn't really a book, it's a graphic novel, and that is Saga Volume 2 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. This is just a continuation of Volume 1, Mom and Dad, which is the different races, Wings and Horns. Mom and Dad are still running for their lives, and they meet a couple new people, and there's no boobies in this one, which is nice, but there's some other body parts that I won't mention because it's funny, and you need to see it. You need to see it so you can laugh at the same thing I did. Anyways, this was really good. I cannot wait for Volume 3. I just love this series. The next book that I want to talk about is a middle grade book because this month is middle grade, and I did throw in a couple graphic novels and a few young adult books as well because I needed to get them done. They're all due, and you know me with the whole library book haul. Anyways, I read The Cavendish Home for Boys and Girls by Claire Legrand. This book is about a girl, Victoria, and she's top of the class and an A student, and she decides that she's going to take one of the boys that's at her school as a pet and make him into a project to kind of, you know, bring him out of his funk. One day Lawrence goes missing, and the entire town knows that he's missing, or may not know that he's missing, but nobody cares. And that's the main thing. Nobody cares, but Victoria does, because without Lawrence, she has no one to make fun of and help be a better person. And so she decides she's going to go on a quest to find out what happened to Lawrence, and other kids start going missing, and she's thinking, well, what is this weird orphanage at the end of the street that nobody talks about? Nobody goes in, nobody comes out. What's it all about? And so that's what you find out when you read it. It's very creepy, and it kind of reminded me of Coraline. So Coraline plus an orphanage and creepy caretakers. I mean, really, if you like middle grade, you loved Coraline, I would definitely check out this book. The next middle grade book that I read is A Tale Dark and Grim by Adam Gidwitz, and I thought when I first opened this up that it was going to be kind of like a scary retelling of all these different fairy tales, but it's not. It's like one really long, drawn-out fairy tale. So this one is about Hansel and Gretel, and it tells you about how Hansel and Gretel came to be. It talks about their family before they were born, what happens afterwards, who the Wicked Witch was. But it goes into a lot more detail, and the story is super elaborate, and I loved it. I loved it, and I cannot wait to read the second and third one. If you like fairy tale retellings and you like creepy fairy tale retellings, definitely check this book out as well. Alright, the next middle grade that I read this month is The Willoughbys by Lois Lowry, and oh my goodness, this was so funny. I even made my 9-year-old read it, and it only took him about a week. It's only 152 pages, something like that. Yeah, like 152 pages. It's about a house of kids. There's 5 of them. There's Tim, who's 12, the twins, A and B. Both of their names are Barnaby. That's so lame. There's not 5. There's 4 kids. Tim, the twins, and then there's Jane. Is her name Jane? I think it's Jane. Anyways, they all live with their parents in this house. Their parents really don't like them, and the kids really don't like their parents. One night, the kids ask their parents if they could read Hansel and Gretel, and that causes the mom and dad to have an idea, and at the same time, the kids think of a really good scheme that they would like to do on their parents. So it's a kid versus parents kind of book, which is really funny, almost like a There's kind of like a whimsical Mary Poppins theme in here as well. Again, it was really short, middle grade, super, super funny. I loved it. You should definitely check this book out. Alright, the next book I read is actually a manga, and that is Death Note. This is volume 1. It's about this boy here. His name is Light, and he finds a notebook, which is called the Death Note, just sitting on the ground at his school one day. He thinks it's kind of like a chain letter, and so he thinks, well, maybe I'll just get rid of it, but he doesn't. He ends up keeping it and testing it out, and you have to find out what happens after he tests out this notebook. But it was dropped by this guy here. His name's Ryuk, and he is kind of like a god in his world, a Shigami, and so now they're bonded because it was actually his notebook that Light found. But I'm liking it so far. I can't wait to read volume 2. Alright, and oh my goodness, you guys are going to clap for me. Look what I did. Finally. I finally finished Red Glove, and I didn't like it. I gave it a 3 stars because it took 4. It took 4 months to read this book. It's not even that long. It was just so, it just dragged. It just dragged, and I kind of knew it was going to drag because the first one dragged, but I was hoping that the sequel would be different because White Cat was kind of boring, but it got a little bit exciting at the end, and this one was boring all the way through. It never got exciting. So, I am extremely iffy on reading Blackheart, which I know I will because I can't not finish a series, but I'm definitely not eager to read the 3rd book. I know a lot of people like Holly Black, but I just don't. I don't really like her writing. She's not funny, and there's no witty points, and it just drags. 3 stars. If you like Holly Black, maybe you will enjoy this series, but I am definitely not enjoying it at all. It may change by the end of the year, but this is my #1 favorite book of this year, which is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I know a lot of people have read it. It's been out for a few years, but this book, this book was so good. It was so good. I could not stop talking about it. I read 300 pages in one day, which is unheard of. I mean, I can read fast, but I usually get distracted. And with this book, I didn't. I stayed up until 5:30 in the morning, and I was so tired that I almost, like, literally passed out with the book. So, it was that good. It's about a boy named Wade who lives in 2044. So, in his time, there's no resources left. Mostly everybody is poor, and the only way that they can escape realism, which is the reality sucks, is to play this virtual reality game called The Oasis. And I will leave my review for this book down below because it's very detailed, but there's no spoilers. So, and you know how I am, I get tongue-tied when it's time to review books on camera. So, Wade is looking for an Easter egg that James Holiday left in his virtual reality, and it's huge, and it's taking forever, and no one has found it yet, and it's just this mega adventure in a video game world that talks a lot about the 80s, which I am in love with because I was born in 81, and so that was the beginning of my youth, and I like to rock out to all those songs. And a lot of these movies that are mentioned in the book I have seen, so it's always nice to know what's going on in a book. And also, if you haven't read this before, I would definitely kind of keep track of the music and movies that are talked about in the book, because I think it would be fun to go, after reading this book, to go back and listen to those music videos and to watch those 80s movies that Wade talks about. It'd be more of like an experience if you kind of like Or you could do it simultaneously, you know, read it. If you hear something or see something, then you can watch it on YouTube or whatever. That's kind of like what I did until I got completely immersed in the story and I could not leave this world because it was just epically awesome, fantastical. Fantastical! I could go on forever. This book was genius. Ernest Cline. I will read whatever you write, sir. You are amazing. The next book that I read this month was another middle grade, and it's called Nest by Esther Ehrlich. I was invited to read this book because I enjoyed The 14th Goldfish by Jennifer Holm, and I'm really excited I got to read this book. So thank you very much to NetGalley and to Random House Children's for inviting me and letting me download the e-arc. So Nest is about a girl who lives at home with her mom and dad and her sister. She's about 12. They call her Chirp instead of her real name, which is Naomi. And at the beginning of the book, you learn that her mom is not feeling too good. Her leg hurts. A few weeks pass, and her mom gets rushed to the hospital, and you find out that the mom has been diagnosed with MS. And so the girls don't really know what that is all about, and so the mom becomes very depressed. And the girls have to cope with dealing with not only a mom diagnosed with MS, but a mom who is extremely depressed, and a dad who is just trying to hang on, you know, and deal with everything that's going on at the same time. So there's a lot of stress in this household. Now, Chirp is in middle school. I think she's in 7th grade, and the way she deals with her stress or her fear is to go out and birdwatch. Chirp goes and does that and, you know, deals with life through birdwatching. And her sister, instead of, you know, doing something that is very peaceful, she's going to party it up and be a little daredevil and go out with people that shouldn't really be the kind of crowd she hangs out with. Her sister is just starting high school, and so she's just a little bit different than Naomi, and Naomi is kind of starting to resent the fact that her sister doesn't want to hang out with her anymore. So basically, in this book, you get the hardships that the family has to face with a sick mom. You get the daughter and mother relationship and how that is affecting each daughter individually. You get how the sisters are starting to grow apart through the stress of the family household, and you get how the dad is trying to react with his daughters now that the mom isn't available very much anymore, and how that all goes about. And so it's definitely a coming of age story. It did make me cry because I'm a sap, but it was really beautiful, and I thought it was well written, and I did enjoy it. I will leave my link down below to if you want to read my Goodreads review, because again, I always write my reviews better than I speak them. Okay, so the next book that I read in September was Constable and Toop by Gareth Jones. This is another middle grade and the final middle grade that I read this month, and this one was so good. Let me just tell you guys really quickly, if you like Beetlejuice, pick this middle grade book up because it is like Beetlejuice. It doesn't have the, you know, the husband and wife dying, but it's got a very cool inside workings of ghost society, like what ghosts do after they, you know, when dead people die, and if they don't go to the great beyond, what they do on Earth. And it's just so interesting. Check out my review. I will leave the link down below, but it was just so good. So this book has two main points of view. There's Sam, who is 11 or 12, I believe, and he lives with his dad, Charles Toop, and Mr. Constable, and they live in a funeral home. And so he's growing up to learn what it's like when dead people die and what they do with the coffins and how to be a mourner at a graveyard and all that stuff. So that's the living aspect of this book. And not only is Sam dealing with dead people every day, but he's also called a talker, and that's what ghosts call people who can speak to the dead. And so Sam has to deal with a lot of unfinished business when it comes to ghosts. Ghosts come to Sam all the time and they ask him for help, and he's just getting so fed up with it, but on the other hand, he feels obligated to help these people because he can speak to them. So Sam is kind of like in between worlds because he lives in the living world, but he can interact with the dead. Now, the second point of view in this book is from the dead, and Mr. Lapswood works in the Department of Dispatch in this ghostly world, and basically the department issues out permissions for ghosts to do hauntings or poltergeists or even be visible, and there are a lot of different permits and permissions and licenses that ghosts have to deal with, so there's a lot of paperwork, and it's just so funny that ghosts have to work. They go to work every day and they deal with paper pushing, and this man's been doing it, or this dead man's been doing it for like 30 years, and he's a doormat and everybody walks all over him and treats him like garbage, but he ends up becoming what he hopes is a hero in this book. It's just really interesting to read about the ghostly part of this book. Yeah, Sam can talk to ghosts, and I've read that before in other books, but just to like delve into the political aspects of being a ghost and having higher ups in your world and people trying to move up the corporate ladder, it's just so funny to go about all of that. And there's rogue ghosts, and there's this corrupt man who's trying to climb the ladder in the dispatch department, and he's going about it in a very bad way. And I'm telling you, if you like Beetlejuice, read this book. It's fun and hilarious and just very, very interesting. Anyways, check this book out if you like middle grade and Beetlejuice. It was awesome. Alright, and last night I finished 3 books. One I was reading for a while, and then 2 mangas. So I did finish up The Farm by Emily McKay. And this is a book about vampires, which I think I've mentioned before in my Friday reads that this book was getting really, really interesting. And it's a different spin on vampires. So all the teenagers live in farms and their blood is harvested for the ticks, but you find out that the ticks are actually genetically engineered humans that went awry. So scientists were working on different kinds of enzymes and putting it into humans and accidentally made ticks. And so that's the vampire plague of this dystopian. That's how they come about. But the twists that happen in this book are amazing. I didn't know it was going to happen. I really enjoyed the dynamic between all 3 main characters. So it's Mel and Lily. Mel has autism. Lily is trying to protect her at all costs. And then there is a boy named Carter who used to go to school with Mel and Lily back in the B4. And he has his own thing that he's trying to do in the book, but that also includes trying to help these girls out and save them from the farm. So if you like vampire books and you like different vampire books, because this is a really scary vampire book and it's not a like romanticized vampire book either, it's just so interesting and I really enjoyed this dystopian. So I did read Dragon Head last night by Minitaro Mochizuki, and I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. So this book is about a boy named Taro. He is coming home from a school field trip. So his entire school is on a train, and right before they reach the tunnel to Kyoto, there is an earthquake and both sides of the tunnel collapse, and Taro finds himself the only survivor for a while. And then he discovers there is another boy and another girl who has survived this accident, and they don't know what to do. They are deep underground, and the food is plentiful, but everybody's dead, and they don't know when anyone is going to be able to save them. So basically that's it. The entire volume 1 is learning about the 3 characters that survived the accident and what they're going to do while they wait for people to rescue them. The other boy in the book, Nabu, is going crazy and starting to see things, and he's becoming psychotic. So it wasn't really scary on my horror scale that's in my head, but it was definitely a good start, and I can't wait for volume 2. And the very last book that I read in September is a graphic novel called Uzumaki by Jinjo Ito, and this one wasn't scary either. If I had to, put it on my horror scale, it would have been about a 4 or a 5, and that's pushing it because 5 seems a little high. It was just really, really weird. Okay, so this girl here, her name's Kairi. She lives in the center of town, and she has a boyfriend that lives on the outside, like the outskirts of town. And he keeps coming in, by train, and he keeps telling her, the town that you live in is cursed and people are going crazy, and my father is becoming cursed, and Kyrie's like, you're nuts. There's nothing wrong with my town. Everything's fine. But all of a sudden, people start freaking out about spirals, and it's all over the book. There's spirals everywhere. And so, like, right at the beginning, Kyrie's boyfriend's dad dies, and he's like completely obsessed with spirals, and the entire town is making people crazy. And it was just a very twisted and strange story. And this is only volume 1. I believe there's 3 volumes total, and I really cannot wait to find out what happens. Maybe she will finally get the hint and run away with her boyfriend out of the town so it doesn't affect her. I don't know. But there's about 5 different stories in this book, and they're all weird, and they all surround the spiral pattern. So those were all the books I read this month. I believe that was 12. I read 12 books this month, 5 middle grade out of the 15 that I wanted to read. I did read Nest, which was on my Kindle. I didn't read any of the books that I chose from my bookshelves because I am awful, but I was able to read 4 from the library. If I didn't have to catch up with everything that I read from the library, I would have more stuff read. One day I will stop borrowing books. But until then, I must do what I must do. So, if you've read any of these books, let me know down below. I really, had a bad reading slump in August, and so I think 12 books is pretty decent. I'm hoping I can read more in October because October is my month. Horror books, here we come. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.